Hi, I'm Patty with Studio R12 Stencils, and today I'm going to show you how to recreate the look of antique signs. I'm going to share my inspiration, and then I'm going to share a brand new stencil line that we have. All right, guys, the inspiration for this showed up in my mailbox. It's Country Living magazine. I love this magazine. There's a lot of really cool trends and home decor in it to show you how colors are moving and the trends and what all is going on. I flipped it open. I'm always looking for signs because we do stencils and we have signs. There's a chicken sign on this one. I love it. But I was flipping through, and I do not have this earmarked. And I got to page 80 in the April 2022 issue. And as I was flipping through, I noticed they had wood antique signs on the whole giant photo shoot. And I then read the little article about this with farm stand signs, and it says these are selling for $500 a piece. And I don't know about you, but I cannot afford a $500 antique sign to go in my house. So I thought, what a great opportunity to show you how to create aged, distressed, chipped, antique, vintage looking signs using our brand new line of farmhouse words. So we have them in small, all the way up to big, and even bigger than that. Okay, the first thing we want to do if we're going to do something aged and distressed is we want to have some sort of background usually. I'm going to show you how to do this chippy paint, but the first thing we need to do is darken our background. So I'm going to use a water-based stain, and it's just an acrylic water-based stain. So get in there, and that means what's neat about that is I can take little ketchup bottle, if I can open it, and I'm going to just add a little bit of water to it so it's not too strong. Mix that up, and then we'll just apply the stain. A little bit more water. That'll help the stain move a bit better. Okay, that's just a nice even coat. You honestly wouldn't have to even make it be an even coat if you didn't want to, but I'm just wanting it to be everywhere so I don't have to make choices when I get ready to make the choices that I'll explain to you next. All right, guys, I blow dried my stain, and I wanted to share with you that when you add water to your paint, just regular acrylic paint, and you water it way down, you can make any of your paint colors into a stain. So you could not run out and go buy another product and have an acrylic stain, or you could just add some water to your brown paint and make a stain out of that. That's kind of a nice little helpful hint. Okay, so this is all dry. I'm gonna lay my stencil on top to kind of see where my letters are gonna be, to see where I'm going to need some pitted background colors. So I have some space on either end, and then of course in the middle of things, and I have about a ½ inch or a little bit more top and bottom, so I'll keep some of that in that direction. And I think as I'm looking at this, I might want just a little bit of black here and there for the pitting. So I'm gonna go ahead and just smear. Smear is a technical term for randomly putting paint places. Okay, so we smear, a little bit here, a little bit there. Real dry application. And then I'll randomly have some cool effects kind of show up. When you have an antique sign, they have been loved for years, and they've moved around, they've lived a full life, and that means that they have layers, right? So sometimes that sign might have started out as a barnwood board or something like that. That's what we've painted this laundry sign on. This is a piece of MDF, so that's not the same thing, but you could take an old board that's already been painted and you can repaint on top, and then when that moves out of your hands into the next person's hands, then that gets loved on and chipped and moved and all of that, and that's what creates all that wonderful patina and the layers. So I am recreating fake patina. Okay, so there, smearing is done. Now I always put my foam brushes in the water so that they don't dry up. Use my blow dryer and get that smearing dry. Okay, the next thing that we're going to do, I'm all dry, we are going to use some wax. This is going to give us our pitting, and I'm going to, in the stencil layer, I'm going to show you how to do the stencil with some of that pitting as well. So that's a really neat application. So I'm going to take my wax, which is a beeswax, and I'm going to just take a little palette knife, and then I'm going to, here and there, just drag that. I want little spots and big spots, clustered spots, and large giant spots. We don't want it thick. You don't need a thick amount. A lot of times I'll use my finger, but my fingers are like fatter than the skinny little end of the palette knife. So I can actually get a finer effect, and I'm wanting the pitting. And I've gathered around. Now, if you get your wax in places that you don't like it, once you've taken it off and you've revealed the pitting, then you can go back over with another layer of paint. So there's no problem. This is freestyling. You don't have to worry about it. If you mess the whole thing up, another layer will just make it deeper and it'll make it more cool. So this will pit and crack, or it'll make the appearance of looking like chipped paint, and it'll do it really organically. So the more you're organic with your application, then the prettier it'll be and the more old it will look. Okay, and then I kind of get down and take a look what I got going. I don't have much going on in the middle, and I think that's gonna be a mistake, so I'm gonna do some random things. We'll do some sanding. You will feel like such a mad scientist when you get done doing this. This is the funnest way to paint, I think. Okay, it's looking like it's got a good case of the wax chickenpox here. So we'll go ahead and stop right there. Wipe off your palette knife, and then you can see that didn't take very much of that wax. It was just a little bit. It was a brand new jar, just a little bit. Lovely thing about this Clapham's beeswax is it is salad bowl, cutting board, and all of that. So you can use it on your projects and paint with it, or you can use it to make things food safe. I love this product. I've been using it for years and years and years. I'm gonna go into a little bit of a mushroomy grayish tan color, and I'm going to mix the two of these together. I think this is too clean. Now I'm gonna do some things to distress it as well, but I don't want it so pretty cream. And instead of brush mixing, I am going to go ahead and just mix a new color. Okay, just to not have too much crazy busy going on. I want it to be pitted, but I don't want it to be busy. Okay, then we'll take our foam brush, go on here, and I'm going to just lay this on top and pull it. I don't want to smear the paint, or the wax, sorry. I don't want it to be too lumpy. I like this color, this is good. It's deliciously vintage. Okay. Wait till you see how fun it is to take and make it the pitted look. This is one of those things that you're going to have to let dry organically. If you heat it, you will melt the wax, and then the wax will kind of spread, and then you'll end up with kind of a gunky mess. So just know that you're going to just let this sit and let it dry the natural way. You could put it outside in a breeze or put a fan on it. Just don't put heat. All right, now we look and see if there's anything, here you're messy, anything I feel like needs to have some stuff happening. Let's clean up that edge. Make sure I'm even-ish. Unlike crackling, which we do have a video for how to use crackle medium, which is so much fun. Crackling, you can't go back and touch anything up. But with this chipping paint, you can do whatever you need to do on it. Okay, brush goes in the water, and we'll see you when it's dry. All right, guys, it has been about 3 hours and my board is finally dry. If your board is cold, then your paint is still wet or your board is still wet. MDF is non-porous. It's a really tight pressed board made out of like board pulp and stuff like that. If I was painting on a piece of barnwood or something like that, it would probably have dried much faster, but there would probably still be moisture inside. Just wait until your board is not cold, and that will be a good way to tell. So I'm going to use a little scraper. They make, this is a little Ranger scraper, but you could use a credit card, you could use a craft scraper. The Loge cast iron scrapers for cleaning those, if you get that nice and clean with soap and water, that will do a really good job too. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our scraper and we're going to go right over the top of our wax and just see what we get. So we have a lot of really even sizes. I am not a fan of the evenness of that. Now what I love is right here, this has got that black and it's got the brown and it's got a little island of the color. Super organic looking. It almost looks like the top part of Florida. But yeah, it is just a really neat organic shape. Love that. These guys are, this is probably more the size that I'm going for. This size. These are a little bit big, but then they're gonna be over letters, so I don't think it's gonna be a problem. All right, and then we got a lot of gunky stuff. So we'll wipe that off, and then we'll wipe off our surface. You don't want that stuff laying around because it'll make the backside of your board greasy with the wax. Okay, so that's our pitted look. Oops. Okay. And I'm going to scrape just a little bit more to make sure I didn't leave anything behind. All right, and now in order to proceed, what we're gonna wanna do is we're gonna wanna take a degreaser. So we're using a Zep. I personally don't have an opinion about Zep one way or the other. Any degreaser that you like would be good. And then I'm going to just spray that on there. And then I'm going to clean that off. Okay, so what I want to say about this right now is I absolutely hate it. What do I do about it? That's what I want to show you. So what I love are these organic shapes at the edges where I did bigger. The smaller didn't translate as well as I'd want it to, but this is always layers. We always do layers and layers for our background. So what we're going to do is we're going to take out our mix color, which I'll just remix again. And actually, before we do the mixing, I think I'm going to do some sanding. I have so many tricks. So over the years, I've learned that these kinds of background things are just really a process. And there isn't one answer. There's not one like, do it this way and it'll be fine. Because it's really an organic kind of process. You're gonna do layers. Okay, pinch that out. And let's do a little bit of sanding. So we're gonna use, let's see. I will get, we always keep our little ends of sandpaper. And so I will take just a 60 grit end of a sandpaper. And I will fold that over twice to give it some firmness. And then I'm going to just sand these edges. Ooh, that's pretty. So what we're doing right now is we're revealing a little bit of color underneath. We are just adding a little bit of texture. Okay, I'm gonna switch to our grody sanding block. This is super got wet paint on it because I wanna go right through the middle. Not wet paint, it had wet paint and that's why that's stuck on there. When you need to make really big, long swaths of sanding, this is the ideal tool, and I need to change its paper. But right now, I'm just gonna use it like it is. Okay, so what we have achieved here, we have achieved a settling of our color. We have achieved a roughness at our edges, a little bit of worn. Okay, now we're gonna go into our foam brush. And we're going to give a little cosmetic attention to our too many spots. And one thing that we can do too, the reason I chose the peaches to do was because that was the $500 sign. That is just an amazing price for a vintage sign. Okay, so I want to see where my spots lie. Okay, so there, if I look at it here and pretend like that's painted, a lot of them will be disappeared through the painting process, but I'll go ahead and just apply. So just tipping the very tip of my brush. I'm not putting too much paint on there. And then I'm just gonna go ahead and just very gently just scumble kind of over the top, just on the ones that are too big. So see how that just kind of settled everybody down just a little bit. Please leave comments and questions in the comments box below. Okay, so now we'll dry this and then we're gonna put on the letters and I'll show you how to distress through the letters. So now we're ready to do the peaches. And when we put our stencil on, if your board doesn't line up, then what you'll wanna do is take a T-square. And so say I wanted the peaches word to be, you know, higher up on my board or whatever, I can use the T-square, hug that right in, hug it in on the top, and then I can make perfectly square, straight. There's nothing worse than an awkward arched accident on your layout of your sign. So make sure that you are lined up nice and square. Take our tape, and we always tape in two spots. Tape on two sides. So bring it over here, line it up, and if I tape on only one side, everything moves. Okay, I'll line it back up again. And then tape the opposite side. That was way too much tape. And now if we try to jiggle it, it doesn't move. Okay, so now we know that we want to have some of this reveal happening through the black with our cream color showing through. So we're gonna do the exact same technique. And this time I am gonna use my finger. Be careful not to do too much. If you do too much, you will ruin the letters and you won't be able to read it. And then you probably want to avoid the areas that have the dark under it because that is going to negate this idea of the light showing through the black paint that we're going to do. Now we apply our black paint. And this is just acrylic paint. These are honey bottles, and that would be one of those affiliate links below. We just buy our paint in bulk, and it's easier to store in the honey bottles. Okay, so we are going to take our paper towel, our dry dome brush. Our dome brushes are shaped in this like arched dome shape. And that means that when you push down on your project, I almost can't make this brush push underneath the stencil. So if you don't want to have bleeding under on your stencils, this is how you do that. Our company has something like 6,000 titles, 6,000 plus titles of stencils. We've been doing this a long time, and this is how you don't make mistakes. Okay, so we pick up some dry paint, meaning there's no water in this paint, dry paper towel, dry brush. You cannot use these brushes for stenciling if they're wet. So you need to have a couple of them. So they come in sets of 3, 5. You can buy 2 or 3 sets of them, and that'll probably do if you're gonna paint day after day. Blot it off on the paper towel. And then in this case, because those of you who have seen other videos, I like to do a scumbling effect, but because I have done the wax, I'm gonna need to go straight up and down. So I'm gonna pick up the paint, dry it off, and then we're gonna go light pressure around our edges. And I'm halfway on the stencil, like the plastic bit, and halfway off. And because I'm doing light pressure, I'm getting a little bit of texture, but that'll be fine. We're just gonna do a couple of coats. And I'm just circling around, and now I'm gonna fill in. I'm going over that waxy bit. It is possible that I'm going to get some wax in my brush. And if that happens, then what I'll do is I'll just change to another brush. All right, guys, so here's what we're gonna do. I have done all of this with one coat of the stippling, and stippling just goes on and on and on. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna switch to my roller, because these spaces are so open and so big. Switch to my roller, and it's gonna go way faster and be way less work. Okay, so just a dense foam roller. This is stained, but it's not hard, and it's not got crunchy bits and stuff like that. So it is fine to use. And I'll just load that. Load it on there. And then roll it off on your palette. And then on your paper towel, you'll offload by pushing. Don't be afraid to push. So we'll go here. And you'll be able to see where the wax is. It'll kind of like lift and not want to adhere all the way. We'll let that dry. Okay, we've got it dry. Found a great little trick. You can do just a regular little fan and just let it blow on there, and that dried it in about 15 minutes. And I put my roller head into a little sandwich bag and then just rolled it all down, and that will keep the air off of your paint. The air is what oxidizes your paint, and that's what makes paint dry. So keep that as a nice little tip to not have to wash a roller head when you don't need to. All right, so now I'll reload some more black. We'll do another coat. We're going to recoat, we're going to sand, and then I'm going to probably recoat again. We'll see what we get with the chipping. Okay, back into the baggie, and then back under the dryer. Not a blow dryer, not with heat. All right, guys, another couple 15 minutes under the fan, and I'm going to peel my tape off. We're gonna do a sand, and then we are going to do another layer. So that is what we have. It is beginning to look like a sign. That's super cool. I've replaced my sandpaper, and now we're going to reveal what we have here for our distress on the peaches word. So far, so good. Okay, now what I want to do is take the little scraper and scrape anything off that is hanging on. Okay, and now I want to look at it and see what I think. I'm going to put the stencil back on, but I want to make sure that I've got enough off. So see, that's what happens when you have a little bit of goopy stuff. And so I've got the paint sitting on top of the wax, and then it'll adhere to this. And so you'll just need to make sure that you buy your sandpaper in like bundles of a couple so that you don't have problems. Okay. I'm gonna give it a little bit harder sand. And now you might be thinking that we have a lot of material leaving, but because we are going to go right back on top, I'm gonna use our Zep, same technique. And honestly, I think what I wanna do before I do the Zep, I think I'm gonna do a little bit more makeup. I'm gonna use a dome brush this time. And I'm gonna go in strategically. And I'm gonna knock back some things that I don't love here and there. Things that got just too big. Hope you guys are gonna stick to the end because this is so many cool layers and so many fun things. A couple really good sneaker things coming up. So I'm gonna go ahead and spatter. If you haven't spattered with a White Wonder spatter brush, you have not spattered. It's just so fun. So I'm gonna mix with water, come over here, mix with some water. I want it to be the consistency of like heavy cream. Okay, so you don't want it to be too thin and you don't want it to be thick. If it's too thick, it won't fall off, and if it's too thin, it'll make giant splatters like oceans everywhere. I'm gonna use something heavy-handed, so I have this China bristle stippler. And I always test off on my palette paper. Then I'll come over here and I'm going to float both of my arms, little ballet pose, right? And then I'm going to knock the spatters off. Reload, always tap off. I think where I have the bigger edge pulls, I think I like it a little bit heavier spattered. Okay, and I'll wipe that off. Stuff it back in. Now, spatters go everywhere, so what I like to do is lift my board and then just wipe away the spatters, which will stay wet a long time. So now this is gonna go back under the fan, and then we're going to do the next layer, and we're almost there. All right, next we're going to go ahead and clean off any wax residue that we have on our letters. So we'll just spray and remove any residue. Okay, my board is dry. I can definitely tell I'm building up a bunch of layers here. And so if you start getting that feeling of a little bit of cool on your surface, a little bit of sticky or tacky, let it dry overnight. If you're doing a whole bunch of layers, I've done some layers that I needed to dry for 2 days. I made a really beautiful barnwood faux clock. And I mean, I was pouring on the layers, and I mean, I think the board was like warping around itself. Once it cured completely for 2 days, it was completely flat, and it's been perfect ever since. I still have that project, and it is like 30 years old. So we'll come over here. We're gonna lay the stencil right back on top. We'll take our black paint. I don't want to do too much to this. I will re-sand after I do this next step. And I want to just be a little bit cautious not to put it everywhere. Oh, something let loose. Make sure we're secured. There we are. Let's give it a little bit more strength of color. And back into the plastic bag. take our stencil off. And I want to be careful not to shift that. Sometimes you can get little bits of paint underneath the edge of your stencil. And so you got to pull straight up and then back onto the blow dryer. All right, we have a completely dry surface. I'm going to go back into the spatter brush one more time. I'm going to get some thinned black paint and add a few more spatters to this. Got me some white area right there. You could spatter right on top of little patches that you made to try to just mask the fact that they were patches. Put that away and back to the blow dryer. All right, we've got about 3 steps left and I'm loving how this is turning out. So super excited. There's one little surprise technique that we're gonna do at the end, so make sure you stick around for that. I'm gonna take a little bit of my black in my paint and I'm gonna blot it off on my palette paper. And I'm going to just run that against the edge. Just want that look of a little bit of something happening there. Just kind of frames it a little bit. If you got messy on your edges, you can also take the time to go ahead and paint those away. So we have a combination of a couple things. We've got sanding. We have our antiquing, which is what we call this step. We've got our wax technique, and we have the layers of the different sanding. So we have the black over the cream being wax techniqued off. We have the black underneath the cream being waxed off, and this is making a very deep project. So I can take this color and I can connect some of these dots if I feel like I need them to be connected. I'm really liking the black and the brown together. I'm gonna hit that with the blow dryer and then the next step. All right, next step, we're gonna hit it one more time with our sanding paper, sanding block. And I'm not pushing on this right now. I am dragging it instead of pushing. Just getting everything to kind of settle in, get groovy. If I wanted a little bit of extra something revealed on the edge, this would be the time to do that. Anything that I reveal will be sunk down with the next step. So that's going right back to board there. And I could go in the middle of some of this and I could take that back to the board. This is your time to get real with what is happening on your piece and squint at it, walk with it. I'm using the corner edge of my sander, going through some of my letters. If I don't want that C to look so broken up where the bridging was, I can just break that up with the sandpaper. Okay, I think that's looking pretty good. If at this point I took too much away, then what I could do is I could put my stencil right back on. Our stencils are reusable, they're washable, they're durable. You will love our stencils because they're amazing. They're bridged well, all the things. If I thought I had gone too far, I could lay the stencil right back on top and give it a little bit more with the black. And also you could go into your background and you could erase some of the sanding if you wanted to with your base coat color. You can always jockey back and forth. Okay, but I like it. So, final step. Okay, this is, whoops, hang on a second. One more piece. My sandwich bag glove. Who says you need gloves and fancy things? Okay, so this is Minwax Special Dark. We'll put an affiliate link below. We keep one of our sea sponges in here, and that's the color that it looks like. Okay, and I just like chiseled some out there. This is magic stuff. Okay, so that this will seal your board and make it be like a nice durable finish, but it also just tints that background and gives it a warm look, a really aged, warm awesomeness. So I don't know if you can see that right there, Rusty, the difference between this side and that side. It's so pretty. Really keep it at the edges. You keep your highlight through the middle. That does magic things for your eye. So these boards are $500 to buy. If you go find one in a flea market or whatever, I think that we did a really good job here today, and I hope that you have fun with it. The wax will take a couple hours or overnight to completely cure. Don't keep this in the trunk of your car because it will stink up your car. So if you do transport it in your car, make sure that you put it someplace where it can air off. This is a petroleum product, so this is something that is stinky. All right, I'm gonna call it done. Thanks for joining me. See you in the next video.